Hello, hello, and welcome. It's good to see you. Hi, Sahira. Nice to have you with us. We're having a few people join now. Hey, Ingrid. Hi, Dan. Welcome. It's good to have you with us. I'm looking forward to a lovely group again today. Um, really excited about today's conversation, actually.
Claire.
Hey, Dan. Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Yes,
Um,
how have you been?
Pardon me, day 18 or 19, I've lost track since getting COVID. So it's
Oh,
been
shoot.
a bit of a bumpy month, and
Yeah.
I'm not quite out of the woods yet. Yeah. So, but
Okay.
I think I'm definitely on the mend, and really
Okay.
looking
That's
forward to
good.
this conversation. Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Thanks. Um, yeah, I wanted to have a conversation around this whole concept of neurodiversity and the language that's being used. I've run into some conversations both in the podcast and, pardon me, in the podcast and also in meetings and just conversation with different people around the term. And I've come up with different understandings of what the words mean, and also different affinity for the different terms too. So I thought it would be really interesting to have some dialogue around it. And of course, I'd like to make this interactive. I've got some slides that I put together to share a little bit. And I'm going to definitely want to hear from all of you. Before we do that, I just want to just take a second to say welcome to everybody. I know Dan's on the West Coast. Catherine is in Montreal. Louis is in Venezuela, where it's always warm and sunny. Well, sometimes it rains as well, but forgive the shaky voice. And Ingrid is my neighbor here in Toronto and fellow noise advocate, doing amazing things. Yeah, yesterday it was the last day for people in Toronto to share recommendations to the city, the municipal bylaw and standards folks, on what we'd like to see happen. And Ingrid prepared these amazing templates to facilitate people actually having their voices heard. So I just wanted to do a shout out to Ingrid and the fine works that she's doing, because I think things like that practical assistance, not only to identifying where we might want to speak up, but making it easy for others to do so. Oh gosh, this cough is really nasty.
Are you sure you're okay, Claire? I don't want to make you do this if you're not
You
up
know
to it
what?
today.
I'm feeling energetically fine. After this meeting, I will probably go crash, because last night I
Okay.
was up. I think I was up from 11 till 4. I think I finally fell
Oh,
asleep at 4 in the morning, which rarely happens. That might happen once a year, once every 2 years, that I have some kind of real, I couldn't sleep. So yeah, you might see me crash and burn before the end of this meeting, but I hope not. It's this tickly cough. So I will try and remember to go maybe on mute. And if I need to cough, I'll just do a cough. So, and Ingrid, you're not feeling well either. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And Sahira, I hope you're okay. You looks like you're resting as well. It's really good to see you. Sahira, I think you're in the UK. Is that right? Yeah. So in the UK. So, and Jennifer joining us from Austin, I believe. I still have to get to Austin. Maybe next year will be the year. It's so on my list. Yeah. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and share the slides now, and let me just do that, because we always, Louis helps me put together the slides that I can share with you. And give me a thumbs up. Can you see them? Am I doing this right? Can you see? Yes, you can. Hooray. Louis, when I will meet, and he'll be like, you're not sharing your screen again. Like, oh darn. So catch me if I fall on that front. But I'll share a little bit of my journey in understanding the term neurodiversity, where I think we are today. And I really want to hear from you as well. Our agenda today, just four points here: a social movement, talking about that, interpretations around the term neurodiversity and some of the other language, resistance, what we're seeing in terms of resistance to terminology and maybe being even included in the group. And what I always want to land on is the positive. What's the opportunity here? So as always, if you've got something to share, flag me down in a picture. I've got your pictures up over here. Louis, I'm not going to be able to manage looking at the Facebook group. So please be sure that you have the Facebook group up and you can see the conversation. And if any chats come there as well. Oh, I can see Monica Harding said hello. Hey, Monica, very glad for you to be here as well. And Louis, please keep an eye on the chat. So if Monica has something to say, we can invite her in the conversation as well. Okay, amazing. So the social movement, it started with this woman named Judy Singer in the 90s. And she's an Australian sociologist with lived experience around autism. And she realized that, boy, the group of people with autism, there was a real need to have a collective voice. So just like Ingrid is helping us find our voice around noise pollution and speaking up for change, Judy believed that there needed to be a movement, and she coined the term neurodiversity. Now, I hear it being used not necessarily in the way that she intended, being used like, so for example, you might hear, I am neurodiverse. Well, if we peel back into what neurodiversity means, it was actually coming from the term biodiversity, which simply means that there is a huge variety of ways of showing up with respect to our biology, physiology, and so on. And that biodiversity is actually a really good thing for our evolution. We continually designing, hopefully for the better, although with COVID, I don't know what experiment this is, but doesn't feel like for the better. But biodiversity is a positive thing. And neurodiversity was in essence saying there is also a range of neurological ways of sensing the world and processing information. And that is also a good thing. So neurodiversity is that varied way of being. We are all examples of neurodiversity. We aren't neurodiverse ourselves. We may be what might be considered neurotypical, neuroatypical, neurodivergent, neurospicy, neurosensitive. There's all kinds of language. We're going to get into that. But this concept of neurodiversity simply means there's a wide range of ways of being that need to be embraced in our world. So I want to give a lot of credit to Judy Singer for being at the forefront of coining that. Neurodivergent came from somebody else, and you really can't find a lot. I apologize, I forget the woman's name who coined this. But if you try and dig into her and who she is, there's really not much profile or much to find there. So it's got some mixed reaction now. So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about the interpretations. First of all, pardon me. First of all, as I mentioned, Judy Singer based the term based on the needs of the community with autism or autistic people. And that's where it really started. It then evolved to include people with ADHD and the DISs, that's dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia. This is all the challenges in functioning with writing or reading or movement. And then it continued to grow, because if we're going to look at neurodiversity as an area, there's got to be room to talk about the different ways of being. So we've seen a continued evolution. Learning disabilities get considered. Then there's acquired neurodiversity, anyone with traumatic brain injury, PTSD. And I have believed ever since I learned what the term meant that highly sensitive people also belong in this category. Now, what's interesting to note is that you can get an autism diagnosis, you can get an ADHD diagnosis, you can be diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. All of these things have diagnoses, but not HSP, not sensory processing sensitivity. So it's a really interesting place to be. I want to pause for a second, not only to cough, but but to invite you to share what you think around when you hear the term neurodiversity. What does it mean to you? Hi, Monique, welcome. Nice to see you here.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much.
Where are you joining us today from?
I am actually in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Where it's probably warmer and sunnier than it is here too.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome.
Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
just to introduce you quickly and take this pause, we're just going to have a group little chat here about the term neurodiversity. And I want you to feel very welcome here. Sahira is joining from the UK. Dan's on the West Coast. Jennifer is in Austin. Catherine is in Montreal. And I say it's Catherine, but I call her Catherine because she's in Montreal. And when I go in my Montreal brain, I start speaking in French because I lived there when my kids were small. And I come out still in a park here in Toronto. I'll say, faites attention, doucement. I'll be giving instructions to kids in French because it's wired in now. Ingrid is also here in Toronto. So I want you to feel all very welcome and connected. Who has got a thought for me around what neurodiversity, the term means? Jennifer, yeah, please go ahead.
I'm trying a new microphone, so hopefully you can hear me. Good, thank you. I was thinking that the term neurotypical doesn't make sense anymore, because if neurodiversity, if it's a whole diverse ecosystem of the way our brains are, what's neurotypical? Like, don't we all have something? Is it maybe a different term to differentiate between all the neurospicy ways to be and the one that's maybe there's a couple that might not be as challenging? I don't know what that term would be, but it seems like we can't really go with the two, neurotypical and non-typical. Like, that's obviously not an answer here.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, neurodiversity is this broad, all-inclusive term. And then how do we start talking about within that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to jump off from that in a second. Who else has got a thought around neurodiversity and how you relate to the word? Anybody else? Yeah, Monique.
I think that when we consider the word neurodiversity, I think that it is creating visibility for the things that are invisible when it comes to people who have neurological challenges or cognitive challenges or differences, I should say. And so I think that it's really wonderful that the conversation is leaning toward how do we accommodate people who can still be great contributors in different environments, without excluding them or making them suffer consequence for being different. I am a speech pathologist by trade, and so understanding how to accommodate children in the classroom is what has drawn me into, like, how does this translate into the workplace, and how can they still find a space for them so that they're able to perform well and meet the standards, but also be able to be seen for their uniqueness. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was going to ask what your lens was, so thank you for sharing. I imagine you're seeing such an insight to seeing young people and then thinking about how they evolve through education into the workforce too, and where we have a lot of gaps. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And that it doesn't go away just because they've graduated, and how do they navigate the real world over time.
Yeah, and that we're seeing, and Louis, I'm coming to you in just a hot minute. We're seeing a lot of adults now getting a diagnosis and realizing, oh gosh, wait a minute, this explains a lot, or maybe it's a jumping off point to work with a deeper understanding of, gosh, the way I am and the way I process things. And I'm hoping what I'm really motivated to do is help people connect to finding their voice to ask for what they need, but also working top down to have organizations and urban spaces, institutions really start thinking of this breadth of experience. So thank you. Yeah, so like-minded. So thrilled that you're here, Monique. Louis, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add also that I've realized, well, growing up, that there seems to be a better understanding of, even though that's a topic of the conversation, there seems to be a better, like, global understanding of, diversity, and knowing that it's not really a negative thing. Like, there's been some negative connotation to the term, and people who do identify as neurodiverse and need to seek, I don't want to say help, but like talk to a professional just to like see how they can live their lives in a way that's better for them. And I think it's something that should start also with oneself. Like, growing up, my parents used to take me to therapists, different therapists for whatever many reasons, and I never really felt comfortable like exploring all the things that a therapist could do with you, because it wasn't until I was an adult and I started going by myself where I started to like analyze my own way of being, and like saying, like, there's something that I don't want to say it's different. Well, it's different, of course, not necessarily wrong, but there's something different, and I think I would feel comfortable knowing what that is, so I can then know how to model my life to better.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, you just touched on something I was saying at this entrepreneur meeting that I was at for the past couple of days, is tuning in and self-awareness is such a powerful starting point, because that understanding then becomes our design parameters for how we're going to sculpt life and work. And hopefully we're working in a place that can dance with us and give us the flexibility that we need. This is my new t-shirt. I'm really excited to be wearing, and I'm going to wear it on stage on Thursday when my cough is going to be gone. Okay, everybody send some good no more cough vibes, because on Thursday I've got 5 minutes to deliver 20 slides, 15 seconds each, and those slides are going to move. There is not a moment for me to be coughing in there. So send all the good vibes. Thanks so much, Louis, for sharing your perspective. I so appreciate it. Dan, what would you like to add?
Yeah, Claire, I'm really glad you brought up the point of finding your voice, because I think that, as speaking personally, it took me till I was an adult to really find my own voice. And I think there's still, I see a lot of my colleagues, even in the workplace now, that really don't have their voice. And I think that's a very good thing. And I think one of the challenges around this is convincing business owners that, well, you need to, consider this, because you're going to pay for it one way or the other, whether you're going to pay for it in terms of people not being engaged and not doing the best they can and not feeling like they're making a difference. You're going to pay either that way, or you're going to pay up front and try to make things better now. So yeah, it's trying to get that message across.
Yeah, and proactively design for that inclusivity, right? So
Yes.
that we can have
Yes.
people making their contributions. I put a post on Instagram today, which was showing off the t-shirt, but it was really sort of breaking down my belief. And it's that everyone deserves to be fulfilled. Well, the only way to be fulfilled is to be able to continue your ability to give. And if you want to be sustaining in your ability to give, you have to have the conditions that don't burn you out. So that's the real goal. Okay, Catherine, I'd love to hear from you, and then I'll jump back into my pretty slides.
Okay.
What would you like to share?
I wasn't thinking, I didn't have an opinion about neurodivergent. It sometimes it can feel, I don't know what spectrum, I didn't know where the word come from, but by comparing it to biodiversity, it makes a lot of sense now. Okay, because sometimes people can be taken aback if you say I'm neurodivergent, because you're like, okay, what do you have exactly? Like, are you bipolar? Are you this? Are you that? And me, I don't have a judgment for that. It's just like, if I know you get anxious about something, then I'll be very careful with you. Like, again, in my field of work, I have worked with neurodivergent children or young women who come for a bra, and I'm warned ahead of time. She doesn't like to be, if you don't get too close, you know,
Right.
talk to her a certain way and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I'm really good with that stuff. It's like they trust me at work. They even the moms who bring their children, their daughters and stuff like that. And I joke with the kid. And if the person feels uncomfortable, I sense it because I'm highly sensitive. So I know how to deal with that. So
Yeah, what a beautiful place for you to be. And I remember, like, ladies out there who remembers their first bra, like, everybody is, it's like, it's very uncomfortable time to understand what's going on with the body. Dan Lewis, thanks for hanging through that part. It's wonderful that the sensitivity is there. And, you know, this is why I choose to use, rather than showing pronouns here, I like to show HSP, because
yeah.
I really think I'm really proud of my sensitivity. And I think, gosh, wouldn't it be interesting if we all felt safe enough to disclose something about the way we are that would help others know? So what if we were feeling really anxious and we could put in maybe there's a worried emoji, or maybe we could share a little bit about where we are at some point, or, you know, that communicates to each other a little bit more. So we start to open that understanding. Thanks. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing. On CNN, the Indian doctor, American Indian doctor, he addressed one day HSP. About a couple of years ago, he talked about it, and he showed the differences, like neurologically.
And now, is this Sanjay Gupta Indian?
Yeah, he did talk
Okay.
about.
That's
he
my
mentioned it.
friend's cousin, by the way. So,
Really? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well,
I will try and look for
mentioned
that.
it.
Hopefully
He
there's a
mentioned
clip.
it on I saw him on a show. I don't remember where it was on TV. It wasn't very long, and he talked about it. So look it up, because I know he mentioned it.
Yeah, and if I can't find it, I'm going to reach out to my friend and say, hey. I've always wanted to connect with him, actually. I quote from his book a lot, Keeping Sharp, around the ideal amount of movement we need in a day, 64 minutes. So I have a lot of respect for him and what he does. So thank you. That's amazing. Amazing. All right. I want to jump into exactly what you were talking about. Am I sharing? Can you see interpretations? What do you think? Yes. Yes. Yay. Okay. So we're going to go into this feeling of resistance. So to your point, you know, neurodiversity, do I want to be associated with this term neurodiversity, and who's in and who's out of that term? I've been feeling, since I started to understand the word and where it came from, that I've been knocking at the door to be included in the term, because if I look at the stats around sensitivity, it's 20+% now, maybe up to 30. And it's hard to define because I think all of these lines are blurry, but let's say 20% of people are highly sensitive. It's not the majority. And if it's not the majority, then it's what I think is neuroatypical. There may be all kinds of neuroatypical. And to your point, what's the norm? I really think that it's important to be in the conversation, to be included, to be part of the conversation that's on the table. I know I spend a lot of time thinking and talking about neurodiversity and the different kinds of conditions and ways of being that are there. And so I think everybody's talking about it. But when I'm out in general public or talking to people in organizations, I'm hearing that, oh, this is kind of new. We're just starting to look at it from a diversity, equity, inclusion piece. This is a group that has not been considered in our workforce. So I'm sensing there's a huge amount of opportunity to say, hey, let's look at it very holistically and be broad in our definition of the terms, so we can actually make room for more people. And I draw on this book. It's always on my shelf behind me as well, because Janara Narenberg wrote this book a couple of years ago now. I think the paperback came out last year, Divergent Mind. And she really identified this through line of sensitivity. And I see it with my clients, many of whom have ADHD. I see it in the autism spectrum for sure. Sensory sensitivity is a known challenge. I see it with anxiety. I see it with PTSD. I see it with traumatic brain injury. In the highly sensitive population, I think there's this need to really recognize that this group of people needs to be talked about and designed for. And so I draw on that. Not every highly sensitive person agrees with me. And I'll talk about that in a second. But first of all, some of the terminology. So neurodiversity, we talked about. Neurodivergence has been the preeminent term to talk about being atypical, which I also list there. That's been a common word, but I've recently learned that there is some strong resistance to using the term neurodivergent because divergence implies a norm. And there's a lot of feeling like, I don't want to feel like I'm not normal. And in the trait of high sensitivity, even if it's not typical, it's considered a normal way of being. It's not presented as that there's something wrong with you or to be fixed. And so there's a definite aversion to the term neurodivergence. And I learned and I know Lewis is going to be able to put in the chat some links for us here. When I talked to Megan Henschel about the terms, and she highlighted to me there's an individual also at Google who was very adverse to using the term neurodivergence and really a proponent of using the term neurodistinct. And neurodistinct is interesting. I mean, it talks to me, that term says there is distinctly different ways of being, but I'll be curious to know what you think about the term. I think it's maybe perhaps more positive language, but does it talk about difference enough? And does it talk about the need for accommodation and inclusion? I came up with the term neurosensitive because of this through line that I see. We're neurologically sensitive. And it may be a sensitivity to needing more stimulation with some people that are hyposensitive versus hypersensitive. But neurosensitivity is something I think that it could catch on as a term. I feel comfortable saying I'm neurosensitive, and I think people understand what that means. But I want to open it up again, actually, to you in 1 second, though. I think I'll share a slide or two more, and then I want to have a conversation about this language and what you think. I thought I would share with you, and this is a screenshot from my time at the HSP retreat last month. And I ran into somebody's quite experienced, highly sensitive person's complete aversion to use the term neurodivergent and even want to talk about it at all. And luckily, I'm really thankful I had put a question to Dr. Erin beforehand, and she actually addressed in the meeting, her feeling was she's not bothered by language at all. She's like, if you find the language helpful, use it. So, and that I think relates also to Theo Smith, who is also another podcast episode. He's got ADHD and is a real ADHD advocate. And he's basically saying, just let's use language that doesn't hurt people. And so I loved his feeling around it. Megan Henschel was basically this feeling of what's normal anyway. And one of the points I wanted to make is that I think what is deemed typical / normal, but I think typical is perhaps more appropriate word, it really is defined by social norms and cultures. And it's going to vary depending on where you are. I've worked in corporations where everybody's on time. I lived in Japan where the trains were on time. That's a cultural environment in which being on time becomes the norm or typical, but it could be wildly different. I don't know about anybody else, but I grew up also understanding Indian Standard Time, where you were never expected to show up on time. You were always going to be late. Indian Standard Time, that's just what it was. So what's normal is so context driven that I think if we say the word normal, we have to throw it up in the air and say it has wildly different interpretations. So Louis, thanks for sharing the links in the chat. For anybody who wants to follow on those episodes, I encourage you to have a listen, because they're such rich discussion, but you can hear those individual perspectives themselves. So I'm going to stop sharing and open it up again for conversation. Sahiri, you've got your hand up. Yeah, please. What would you like to share?
Hello. Well, my feeling is that it's impossible to use language that isn't going to hurt anyone.
Mm.
And I mean, a couple of those are new terms for me, which I like. I didn't like the word neurodivergent. It, to me, sounds like you're wrong or you're bad in some way. Yeah. Almost criminal, I think, is it just my mind. And I was in a discussion, here in the UK on a thing, and over here, there's a strong kind of movement of wanting neurodivergent. And I prefer the word neurodiverse. And I'm like, so that's okay. You can do, but I still refer to myself as neurodiverse. Well, they went off on one. And I'm like, no, I'm like not against the movement. And this is the thing, is we all have our own personal triggers and cultural and language, and what we need to make acceptable is that people can refer to themselves in their preferred language, like their preferred naming. So yeah, I'm really pleased to see the neurodistinct. I'm like, yes, I think I'll start using that one now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's really interesting to see what's happening in different places as well. Yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Dan, what would you like to add?
Oh, Sahira, thanks so much for saying that. I just put basically the same comment into the chat, that it's very hard to foresee every possible reaction to what you might do or say. And I'm really trying hard to move away from this whole idea of, oh, we can't use certain words, or we can't say this, or we can't say that, and put ourselves in a straitjacket in dealing with people. I mean, truth of the matter is, I mean, if you deal with people with an open heart and you're wanting to work together and try to make things work, I mean, I don't think we should get so wrapped up in our language. So I just wanted to say thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the spirit you'll hear, I think, with Theo as well, when he talks about it. He's just like, oh, and I think there was a total aversion to actually being in this conversation for fear that it was going to be controversial. Well, I think you should do this. And I was like, whoa, let's explore what kind of perceptions are out there, and let's hear what words mean to people. I mean, language continues to evolve. I learned just in the summer that people in the deaf community do not want to be called hearing impaired. This is what I was told by a woman whose mother is deaf, and she works quite extensively in the community. And she was saying, on behalf of that community, her perception was impairment. People didn't want to be seen as being impaired. Now, it's interesting, when I look at the UN Convention on Rights for People with Disabilities, it actually talks about disabilities as impairments, and sensory impairment is there. And I had to come face to face with the world saying, wait a minute, I don't think I have sensory impairment, but my sensory attentiveness, my high attunement, means that I have a challenge participating in the world. And so, am I okay with the language? Am I not? Am I going to use the language with where it is today and how it's being commonly understood as a point of leverage to get what I want? maybe I'm okay with that. And to coax an evolution in the way language gets used into more positive terms that we feel are identifying. But that was my experience coming face to face with the term impaired and thinking, I don't know if I want to use that or not. I think personally, as I see neurodivergent being a term that corporations are starting to understand, I'm willing to say, let's work with that if you want. If you want to talk neurodistinct, let's talk neurodistinct. Whatever we can do to have a conversation that includes different ways of being and making room for them, that's what I'm down for. So yeah, I think language is going to continue to evolve. And so where's the opportunity? And I'm touching on it here. I think you can see thumbs up if you can see my slide. Let me see. I can't see you anymore. Where'd you go? Where did everybody go? Where did my Zoom go? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay.
Fabulous. Okay. I think when I brought the slides up again, you're probably behind them. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on the two models of disability. And I think the more we can move from a medical model of disability, which says, what's your diagnosis? What's your impairment? What is this thing that is medically validated that limits you, to the social model of disability that says, oh gosh, there's something from keeping you from participating. Can we look at removing what that barrier is? I think then we actually open up the world to this conversation between leaders and their teams, which is, what do you need to succeed? How do we get rid of the barriers? Rather than, can you send me your doctor's note? And, oh, then we'll look at accommodation policy 549, and that means you can have a standing desk. That kind of thinking. I think if we can get some movement towards the social model, we'll have opportunity. And I think that common language can be looked at as the starting point for conversation. And if we bring then healthy respect to our attitude to that conversation, then we can move in all kinds of beautiful places that has everyone feel seen and heard, and can go from there. Ultimately, I would want to have another t-shirt that says, never mind the labels, and really encourage people to get to that intimate understanding of what somebody else needs to perform at their best. I want to actually add in here now, this is to that end, and to this work, I've created the new, and it's ready for sharing, the work style profile. This is the questionnaire that you can take to drive self-awareness. It's a short questionnaire. You can do it between 5 to 10 minutes it will take. And it's a bunch of, pardon me, just answer questions around your availability, when you like to work best, your processing style, your ergonomic preferences, just an opportunity for self-reflection and filling in some blanks and ticking some boxes for the large part of it. And then there's a page all about nuance being necessary. And this is an opportunity to really reflect on what else affects your ability to perform at your best. Who are you taking care of? Who's dependent on you for care? What other health impacts are there, or challenges are you facing that might need some accommodation? And the goal is that this tool becomes something that kickstarts a conversation. It's something that you share with colleagues. It's something that you share with your leader. And then I've designed and looking to test now Total Teamwork, which is a program for leaders and their teams to actually co-create work together with the facilitation of not only leadership coaching, but team meetings, so that no one's left on their own to have this conversation. It's in a safe space, and it's inviting sharing, and then conversation to compromise, figure out where the compromises are, figure out where the asks to be together and work perhaps is one of them. And really acknowledge each other and see the leader who's struggling to manage the abstract, the time that's abstract, and now the people are abstract, and also to see the people that are perhaps in a wheelchair or perhaps attending a medical treatment with their partner because of cancer treatment, for example. There are so many competing priorities which we need to make room for and navigate around and still be great contributors or work. So I invite you to all check that out. Lewis will put a link to the work style profile in the chat as well. And then I'm going to stop sharing. I'm just going to come back and share that at the very end. There's some other thing that I'm doing towards the end of November. Sahira, what would you like to share?
Hi again. Yeah, I over here, and I don't know what the state of play is in your countries. But it's absolutely shocked me as somebody who's recently diagnosed ADHD, but has, you know, known to be HSP for a lot longer, that there are major accessibility issues for non-visible disabilities still in education and accessing medical care. And it's outrageous. I'm like, but these things have been going on for ages. And, you know, I've now been alerted that it's a significant issue for the neurodiverse community that's still not being addressed. And I'm getting together a team to try and, well, I've got a plan to try and start addressing this. And the big part of that plan is that it's you know, based on needs. It's needs focused, so not diagnosis, not, you know, okay, you've got auditory like sensitivity, or, you know, so you need this and this, like yeah. And, you know, and again, that people can self, you know, identify as to what they're comfortable with saying, rather than as a community we all have to agree to the same language. So that's one bit that I didn't quite agree with on yours. I think we just need to normalize you know, allowing an acceptance that people can refer to themselves in whatever way is most comfortable and appropriate for them. And yeah, so there's still loads of training that needs to happen around sensitivity issues, and that's really valuable that you've outlined that is a commonality between them all. That's really super helpful. But we also need to come up with a really, well, there's a training aspect, obviously, but a easier way for medics and things like that to quickly identify needs, to be able to better meet needs, or at least attempt to.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Somebody I've worked with or talked with over the past few years sent me, I think it's a 95-page document around all the accommodations that could be available. So
Ooh,
this is
yes.
why the chapter I was writing the book, as you know, that goes along with all of this. And I wrote a 9,000 word chapter, and I went, okay, this is not working. So this is why there's the nuance is necessary page, because we've got to hear from people in their own voice, with their own words, to say what's most important to them in that situation. So I thought, if I go and try and build something to capture it all, I'm going to get it wrong. So it's a stab at, terrible word. It's an attempt to make it easy to complete, because I know many of my clients and myself don't have a lot of patience for forms in general. So how do I make this at least like tick, 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 tick? Yes, like let's get through some stuff that's easy to tick box, and then also make some room for an invitation for self-expression. So I hope that felt part of the experience. there as well.
Mhm.
And I would love to book some time with you to chat and learn more about what
Me-
you're thinking about. And
Oh. And please, would you send me that document? That would be fantastic, actually, to help with the framework.
yeah, I will look for it in my computer. And yes,
Love it.
yes,
I
absolutely.
wrap
Book some-
myself.
You can book time with me at chatwithclaire.com, and we can have a conversation, and then put in the notes where you say, what are we talking about? Why am I on this call? Or a reminder to do that. And then that will help me out. That's amazing.
Wonderful. Yeah, it'd be
you.
great to link you into it all as well.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much. I'm going to come to Jennifer, but Lewis, in the interim, I'm going to ask you to read through the chat in Facebook and here, and perhaps cue me to any other comments that should be talked about and raised. And I do want to say that anybody who's in the Facebook group now, if you DM Lewis, he can send you the link. If you did want to join us on Zoom, he can send you the link. Because I realized I went into this is a confession. I went into my email marketing system over the weekend, and I realized it's been blacklisting people, and there was no intuitive way to figure out, or an invitation to say, if you know this person is good, reach out to us and we can have them removed from the blacklist. So I finally figured that out. And last night I got the okay that 15 people are going to be added back to the list because they were blacklisting them for no good reason. So Jennifer, I think you were one of those people. So I apologize in you not having the link. And if anybody on the Facebook group wants the link, then let's make sure you can have that right away. Jennifer, let me come to you right now and see, what would you like to add?
Something that Sahira said that also that she touched on, at least, is that the some ways for us to identify ourselves to the world in times where we can't speak. I think about the police departments that come upon someone who is either having a mental health issue, or maybe someone on the spectrum, or someone who's deaf, or any of the things, and they don't know and they can't recognize immediately. And whether it's the police or EMS or whoever, where they have to engage with someone and they don't know, Catherine has the opportunity where she works that people will let her know, but there are so many situations, emergency type situations, where that's not possible. And certainly training these kind of folks who work in these situations is important. But I know, and I think I've heard that in some places you can get some sort of a sticker to put on your window if the police pull you over, or encounter you in your car, maybe they can see it. But there's so many places in the world. And I even think just going out, like I have a pin or so, I think that I got made that says that I'm HSP, but I don't wear it all the time. I don't feel like that's something I always want to have on.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not always an opportunity to speak up. So engaging this way, where you can put HSP with your name, is one thing, but out there in the real world, it's so much harder. And there are dangerous situations where it would be good that people can recognize when someone could be be neurodistinctive and having a challenge in that space.
Yeah, I put in my, thank you, Jennifer. I put in my Facebook post recently that a conference that I'm going to go to next year is a Global Speaking Summit. They actually had a box to tick on the form, do you have sensory sensitivity? And it turns out that the woman who runs that was in my living room on the weekend, and I didn't know. She said, I saw your post. It was me that put that in. And I was thinking, oh, this is so fantastic. So, I mean, it's, I think, raising consciousness around our need for compassion around the different ways of being. As anyone curating a space, interacting with other people, we have a responsibility to, yes, be educated. I think education is really going to be the key to invite people to pause before they're reacting. And I think if we pause, we can choose to respond differently. My son relayed a story to me one day. He was taking the bus home from school, And on the bus, a young man stole his hat. And my son said he quickly could tell that the person had some challenges, cognitive challenges. And so when it normally could be very confrontational, and you can imagine two young men potentially getting into a fight or a disagreement over it. And he said, once I could tell that, I let him have the hat. So real interesting when we put a pause in and try to consider where someone else is coming from and what they might be dealing with, what the reaction might be. So thanks so much, Jennifer. The other thing that your comment made me think of was the sunflower, right? And I talked about that on another episode. I know that I would choose to have that and wear it when I'm traveling, because it's a universal and hopefully being more understood symbol. But when I'm going out, I don't have anything that signifies HSP. I was kind of hoping that the happy space with this happy face might be something that would be a symbol where we're like, it's 19% tilted to show that we see the world just a little differently. And that might be kind of a fun, positive symbol to wear, but that's just one of my billion ideas. So, okay, we've got 9 minutes left. Dan, I'm coming to you, and then Emma, I see you.
Yeah, there's a lot we can gain from all the different perspectives and all the different backgrounds and everything because I work with a group of people from all different nations that have all different, expertise in different areas. Maybe some know the business more than others, and maybe some more the analytical tools than others, but we all work as a team. Now, I want to go back to what I was saying earlier about that companies are going to pay for it one way or another, either, through doing something up front or down the road when you're needing to adjust. But you've dealt with a lot of companies and what you do, and you talk with a lot of companies. So I'm curious, Claire, has that statement been brought up ever to companies about, well, this is something that is going to be something that you're going to need to deal with at some point? I don't know if that's ever something that's come up.
It's interesting. Well, I'm thinking of the conversations I've had around diversity, equity, and inclusion right now. I've seen DEIB. I've also seen DEIA for accessibility. I think that it's really going to depend on people's individual experience in those roles and their consciousness about the myriad of challenge and where an organization is choosing to prioritize. I think neurodiversity is being more understood. I mean, I was happy to be at this event and be talking to someone in conversation and saying, oh, I'm highly sensitive. And they knew immediately what that was. And that's new. The bulk of people still don't understand, but I haven't seen any research that says how widely the term is understood, for example. So I think depending on the challenge, there are varying degrees of understanding. I think the term autism, the terms ADHD are pretty much universally known, but what do we know about them? That's going to fluctuate. And high sensitivity, it's climbing in terms of just even its appreciation as a term. What people know about it, there's all kinds of preconceived understandings of the word sensitivity, which we have to then emboldened to to have a more fulsome understanding of what that means. But my work is really inviting organizations to think more broadly and get to that, never mind the labels, and get to the conversation and the attitude of curiosity, the whole ask model. Anticipate, suggest, and know. Anticipate a challenge that, based on what you know about someone already, anticipate a challenge that someone might face. S is suggest solutions that might be helpful. And K is commit to better knowing all the time. And then just keep cycling around this ask model. We're never finished because things are always changing. So that's my big invitation, is to have organizations recognize that productivity is personal, capacity is dynamic, flexibility is inclusivity, autonomy is for adults. I've got all these sound bites. I'm dropping them all on Thursday, and I hope people can catch them all in the 5 minutes. And never mind the labels. So standing in this place of curiosity and inviting the conversation is, I think, where we need to land. Lewis, yes, I was going to come to you and say, what am I not paying attention to, because I can only do one thing at a time.
No, well, I wanted to add on to Dan's, and I know someone else said it in the chat, I think it was Jennifer, point when they say that there's no way to like make sure that you're knowing everything, about people's terms and everything all at once. But I think respect is everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, I think because I think from both sides there are people who are resistant to the terms, and there's also people who are very stern with the way they see themselves. So I think it's just respect, as you said, just keep learning and just being understanding. If you mess up with the term or something, just apologize and try and use the terms that people do prefer. And same goes with everything.
Yeah, as we're learning, as we continue to learn. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, Lewis. Emma, I know you had your hand up before. Do you want to jump on and share something, or did we cover what you were going to say?
It was really more along the sunflowers. I mean, I don't know if you can see,
Yeah.
I wear this, yep, I wear this little bracelet here, and I've always got my lanyard on me. I think whilst I have a hidden disability with MS, it's so much easier now, because it's been a symbol that's been widely used within the environment, definitely post-COVID. Sorry, dog's jumping up on the side. My concern is that it is somewhat misappropriated. So there's an awful lot of language around everyone being sensitive and having these issues without necessarily actually genuinely having them. And it's the concern that I potentially have that people are misappropriating and using for not necessarily nefarious terms, but that sort of, taking the value from it and away from people who genuinely have a requirement for these concessions. And I suppose my concern would be, within a larger environment, is how can we ensure that people embrace it when it's genuine, or how do we stand out as being genuine in a sea of voices who are just going, oh yes, me too, because it makes my life easier. I don't know.
A whole lot of gray area in that, I think. And what it strikes me as, I think we've had global PTSD going through the pandemic, and we went through a serious quietening of the whole environment. So people's sensitivities in general are in many cases, people are more sensitive. And so when does it become a valid thing? Do we need a diagnosis? There is no diagnosis. At what point does it become valid to try and accommodate someone? And it's going to be very interesting to navigate too, because we have the hyposensitive that need more stimulation, that need to be also finding their appropriate environment, and then the people who need it to be calmer. And my hope is, from a design thinking, that we can design for sensitivity, hypersensitivity first, and contain as much as possible the areas where hyposensitivity is at play. So that means a room where it's noisier or brighter, but it's more limited. It means that the motorcycles and leaf blowers and noisy machinery is not permitted and welcome, that the hand dryers that are hearing damaging and put in multiples and concrete bathrooms are, that we start to understand from a design perspective human physiological needs and stress response, and we start to design a little more respectfully for humanity in general. And hopefully that will take some of the need to lobby for what we need away, if we can design better.
To be fair, I think actually just being accepting and inclusive in that things like, so wearing headphones, it's not me being rude, it's the fact that it is overwhelming and too loud.
Yeah. I've got to just want to show one more slide, then I'm going to come to you, Shahira, just because I am reminded that I very rarely remind anybody that I actually have a business and actually I'm looking for customers. Not so much that, but I've got something I'm bringing back that I ran last year, and it's the Design Your Best Year Yet. I'm going to run it again on November 30th, and there's a link Lewis can put in the chat where you can find more information about that. If you came last year, I'm inviting you back at no charge, but you have to bring 2 friends. So I would love to do that. I've heard some wonderful feedback from people that did attend last year and really had some profound changes this year. So that's a real opportunity to really think about how you want 2024 to be and be intentional about what's in and what's out and to what you devote your attention. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, definitely do that so we can keep in touch. And I'm just going to say, because we're right at 1 o'clock, I want to thank everyone for joining. I am going to, what I'm going to do now is I will turn the Facebook live stream off, and I will be happy to stay on for about 5 or 10 minutes more in conversation here. But I want to thank you all for attending. And I know the chat was busy in Facebook too. I see Leona was there as well, and Monica. So thank you so much for joining. Shelley Butler as well. Just giving the names. It's like the Romper Room. Anybody watch Romper Room? And they would go through all the names of who they saw. And you were always hoping for your name to be read out, but mine never was. So just thank you so much. I will go through those comments later. And I just want to thank you for being here. I'm going to stop. How do I stop the live? That's what I'm going to do now. Stop live stream. Okay, bye Facebook. And thank you all for watching. If you're watching the replay as well, I'm going to stop the recording now. And thank you all for being here.